Hey everybody, it's Ethan from Zimmer Labs, and this is Miguel's Hero Luke Return of the Jedi Proffieboard Pixel Saber that I just finished up for him. This is a gorgeous hilt. Absolutely my personal favorite version of this hilt for screen accuracy, quality of build, design for lightsaber installation. Everything about it is just awesome. This is the 7 Chambers Phoenix Props Hero Ultimate Edition hilt. I don't know if you can actually get these anymore. I bought this one 3 or 4 years ago just to have in stock. Basically, I try to do that with any hilt that comes out that's really nice. You know, things that are average or that I expect will be available whenever, I don't worry so much about. But when something brand spanking new comes out that's gorgeous, like, good example, this Pariah V3, I think it is. Got a set of these empty, just, you know, hanging out on display, because at some point someone's going to want to buy a set of Osage Ventress sabers, and those are just the best version of that hilt as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I guess you could say the Solo's hold version is probably equal, but they're quite a bit more expensive, so price taken into consideration, the Watto's Junkyard version is definitely my go-to. But anyway, so the story is, I had this hilt, but hadn't actually sold it yet. Miguel got in touch, and he wanted me to build this saber for him. But what he wanted me to do was make it look like Luke's lightsaber from Return of the Jedi. Now, of course, it's pretty close, and I mean, you could do it. You know, you could put this grenade section on a lathe and turn off the black coating so that you had some silver lines here, and you could powder coat the bottom section of this wind vane here to get that to be black, and then you could replace the clamp card and swap out this cover tech for a D-ring, and then probably turn this part on a lathe too to make it silver. But, you know, at the end of the day, you're never going to be able to make this look exactly like this, because they're just not the same lightsaber. I mean, as you can see, they're slightly different sizes, the proportions are different. The thin neck is much longer over here than this one. The control box is really quite a bit different, and it's a lot bigger on this guy. So, you know, at the end of the day, I just didn't think it made a lot of sense, because, you know, it's something that I can totally understand and get behind if that's the lightsaber you want, but this is the hilt you have. But I know that serious collectors are really more interested and focused on getting exactly what they want with total screen accuracy, and not something that's kind of close that, you know, somebody customized to look kind of like what you're looking for. So I offered Miguel to trade him that hilt for this hilt, since I had it in stock, and I can just put that Roman Props Obi-Wan into inventory for a future build, and I was able to give him this one. And I'm really happy I was able to do that, because that's, you know, that's why I keep all these hilts in stock. And I think at the end of the day, this is going to work out great for Miguel, because he gets exactly what he wants, and he ends up with, as far as I'm concerned, pretty much the definitive version of this hilt. So at any rate, without any more fuss, let's dive into it. This guy is very, very well machined. It's got all the little details. It's got the little red and green arrows that will actually light up. It's got functional side buttons, functional clamp card button. It's even got the accurate inaccurate ring widths on these little silver stripes in this grenade section. No, 3, 4, 5, and 7 are thicker than 2, 6, and 8. Evidently, if you look real close in the movie and the actual vintage prop, these are actually slightly different widths. And it's probably just because when they made it, they weren't all that careful about how they turned this section to reveal the silver metal. And they probably just turned some sections a little bit further than the others. But at the end of the day, you know, Phoenix Props and Seven Chambers really, you know, measured everything out and got it all just exactly right. So it's perfect, and it really looks the part. Plus, it's a great size. It's 100% aluminum with the exception of a pure copper piece up here. And it's not just copper plate, it's solid copper, so that's really nice. That means that it's nice and light, and it's also very sturdy. It's a very stable hilt. But it's also nice and small, you know, it's not a clunker. Whereas a lot of Luke Hero lightsabers you see, especially like your Black Series or FX lightsaber, these things are huge. And the skinny neck part is just as fat as the whole rest of it. They just change the color and kind of try to draw your attention away. So, like, let's put it side by side with this Obi-Wan so you guys can see. And it's an inch shorter, and it's probably 20% thinner in diameter. So it's really a very small, compact lightsaber, which is what you want because that's screen accurate. But being screen accurate while still being able to have a good full install is not the easiest thing to do in the world. Like, here's side by side with a Anakin ROTS saber, and this is a pretty small saber too. Compared to a Graflex, this is 20% smaller than a Graflex. Now, the way this guy works is we did a somewhat budget build installation. To access the internals, you just unscrew the pommel, and you've got a 28mm JBL premium speaker here. Pops right out. It's its own modular unit with a little PCB connector system. And then if you look inside, you got the USB port here to program your Proffieboard, connectors right here for the speakers, recharge port right there, 1.3mm, and main power switch here. Trigger your main power switch and you get this startup sequence on the side control box LEDs, which is just, you know, it's kind of as close as I could get to programming it to be like the movie. After that, it does something a bit different. So we'll toggle on to the next font, and now it's just solid red because it's turned off. On, green. Back off, red. So red for off, green for on. Simple, right? Now you'll notice that this is gesture controlled, and that's nothing new. It's just I really like that feature. So this is FET 263's twist on, twist off feature. And to do it, all you have to do is a back forth. So, little practice, and the same to turn it off. Really simple, really convenient. Plus, it's cool. It's almost like magical, kind of. At any rate, now let's jump back to the original preset, and I'll walk you guys through it. Custom blade plug that I made. It's got really nice shine through. It's pretty screen accurate though. It's a simple blade plug. You just have a little bit of a little nub sticking out from the middle, and mainly metal, but you want to have a nice thick ring for the shine through around the edge. I got force quotes.
I feel the conflict within you. Let go of your hate.
And each font has different quotes all set in them. Also, different audio tracks for each. tried to make these as much Luke-y, you know, the audio tracks as much Luke-ish Jedi hero tracks as possible. Now, let's pull the blade plug out real quick. So, hex key on the side here. Just a simple blade plug. A section of extra thick diffused blade tube, and then a custom made greeble. We've got a stock Custom Works onboard pogo pin NeoPixel connector. And a custom made plexiglass diffusing screen. And there's just a minimal gap right around the edge, about 1/8 of an inch thick, where the diffusing screen doesn't meet the edge of the emitter, and that is so this metal ring here can meet all the way down to the base and the bottom of the emitter to give it a really nice firm connection. We'll get to the blade in a moment. Now, as to how this puppy works, to break it down, you simply press on the top here of this clamp card, and this slides right out. This is not plated, it's solid copper, and it's really, really well machined. The only thing you need to do to keep in mind that with copper, it does oxidize, so you want to just wipe it down with a little bit of oil occasionally, this part and this part, to keep them nice and shiny. But the machine job on both of these parts, exquisite. You know, the corners are ultra sharp, all your flat surfaces are really flat and really clean. Now, to break this guy down, as I was saying, it's a simple one screw affair. Phillips, small Phillips head screw, I think it's a number 1, and that pops this whole thing right off. Then take your pommel off, slide out your speaker, remove your chassis. And I wanted to make this whole saber fully modular and fully able to be broken down and tinkered with, taken apart. I wanted it to be as clean as possible. I wanted it to be, you know, classy, simple, clean, and something that that Miguel can really just enjoy playing with. So, as you can see, it's modular, and the connection between the control box and the rest of the chassis is header pins, 6 of them, and they line up perfectly with this cutout hole, pre-existing hole that, you know, is intended for the wires to route through. All you have to do is drop the speaker in, screw on your pommel, and then everything's lined up perfect. This guy will just seat right back in there. Easy as pie. Pop it out, unscrew it, take everything out, and that is all you have to do to break this entire thing down. We've got a Molicel MX 3500, I think it is, 18650 battery, which is a 20 amp discharge, 3500 milliamp hour battery, so really, really high-end lithium cell. Then we've got a second set of stock Custom Works NeoPixel connectors here, or NPXL connectors here, but obviously without the pixels, since this is an internal connector and you wouldn't put pixels there. If you look in there, you see the opposite side, the female side of that, which is mounted inside and mates to this. Just drop it in there, and you can even feel the springs and the pogo pins pushing back on it, so you know the connection is made just right. Then Proffieboard up here, version 2.7, and the other header pins here, the female header pins, a little custom French faux leather cover here to completely mask the wires. All the other wires are soldered to the reverse side, so you don't see any wiring whatsoever on this guy. Nice clean build, and the Proffieboard basically looks like it's just sitting there. You have access to your USB for programming right here, and SD card right here. You don't actually have to take the SD card out. If you want to access it, you can simply connect with USB to a computer and then use the computer to communicate and modify the contents of your SD card here. But it's faster, if you're going to be moving a lot of files around, it's faster to take this guy out and put the SD card directly in a computer. That'll do the file transferring a whole lot faster. This is the little connector set for the speaker. Little tiny micro pogo pins. These guys are great, but they're like totally unique and totally different from every other pogo pin that you see or that you would use in any lightsaber. So you have to have just these random special pitched ones in stock just for this one little application. But it's nice to have them because when you need them, they really do work great. This is also, again, this is a Stock Custom Works PCB connector set here. Recharge port. Now, up top, I wanted to do a little something with this top section here because the chassis that I opted to use for the build has this, little section here, which is, I think it's intended for a crystal chamber or some other decorative element, but the budget build didn't allow for, a full-on crystal build, but I wanted to do something, and I decided to do a plasma gate. So it ended up being a bit more work than a crystal chamber would have been, but it's got a small section of polycarbonate with a 25-layer Corbin film wrap, and then some brass hex mesh here mounted inside that I actually electroplated nickel before installing, and then pixels running the lighting, and so it actually diffuses up this plasma gate, so it mimics the effects of the blade. Pretty cool. It's just a little thing, but it mimics the blade and it looks really good, and it's really, really well illuminated. The best part is it's only one pixel doing that. Here's a blade lockup, blaster block, clash, toggle a few blades down. This is the cyan blade. So basically, at the end of the day, what this is doing is, it's a conduit for the plasma to run up and into the blade. So basically, it's going to be doing whatever the same as the blade is going to do, because it's, it's the precursor power stage for the actual blade itself. And that's pretty cool. It came out really well, and it's nice too because it's a throwback to the olden days of pre-pixel blade lightsabers, back when we did Luxion lightsabers, and all the blades were actually made in this style, 32 inches long and no hex mesh inside, but still the same idea, same technology. One really bright LED at the bottom illuminating up the Corbin film wrap the whole length of the blade, but doing just a small plasma gate in that technology, in that style, is cool. It's like a vintage retro look, but also a really effective way to do it, and it's nice and bright. It's a good looking effect. This is a fire blade. And back to the first blade. There we go. Now, let's put this guy all back together, and I'll show you how the actual lightsaber works. The only other thing to mention before we do is the button setup. So, the way this works is, you've got two LEDs mounted in here, and a 3D printed plastic apparatus to hold everything, with one tactile switch mounted here, and one mounted here going up. But the way this, the only complaint I have about this hilt, the Hero Ultimate Edition, is this auxiliary button setup here. I had to totally modify this and add a whole bunch of bits to make this solid. Initially, this little side grable button piece just was a flat piece of aluminum with a hole in the back that you would glue to the top of this tactile switch. So if the tactile switch was not the kind that was stable, this piece would go 360 and just swivel around, and it would also go side to side, and if you banged it too hard, you'd probably just break it right off the button and break the button. So, you know, after I built it and, you know, did the install, I decided it was totally, basically unacceptable, because one accident and this would be broken and coming back for repairs, and I just didn't want to have, you know, Miguel have to deal with that. So I took a look at it and decided that I wanted to stabilize it for the sake of it not, you know, taking abuse to break the switch, but also for the sake of it being more likely to stay oriented correctly. So I didn't want it to go side to side, and I didn't want it to go front to back. So what I ended up doing is adding two steel pins that run from the inside of this black switch and down through the side of the control box. And what I did was I drilled out two holes in the control box that are essentially identical size as the diameter of the steel pin, so that they're a nice tight press fit, so that they don't allow this thing to wiggle at all. It's, as you can see, it's really, really stable. And then I also put two very small springs around those two steel pins and installed them up into the backside of this black greeble, so that those springs now, in addition to the button pressing back on this greeble, you've got two springs pushing it back up again. And that's what you want. And you can also see and feel that it is much more stable and robust, whereas originally it was definitely a weak point. The other thing to point out is how this clamp card stays in place. It's pretty clever. There are three screws here. One is the Phillips head screw, which mounts this to the hilt, and then there are two flat Allen key screws here that have been screwed in to exactly the right level and then thread locked in place, and their whole purpose is to put pressure on the back of this clamp card, so that when it slides up and it meets those screws right there, it gets locked in tight, so this guy won't come out. There's no adhesive or anything else that's holding this on. It's just the pressure from those two screws pushing this up into place. Now let's put this guy back together. Reinstalling is simple, just the opposite of what we did. The only thing to keep in mind is to make sure that you line up the header pin connectors with this wiring route hole. Slide it in, make sure you can see those guys through there, and make sure they're in the middle, and then pop in the speaker. Reinstall the pommel, screw it tight, press fit your control box, number one Phillips head screw, about 5 turns, press fit clamp guard. That's all there is to it. Now there's one other thing to mention, Miguel. Keep in mind, this is a potential point of failure, a potential weak point. This pommel screws on here with these little tiny ultra fine micro threads that are aluminum on aluminum. And if you're familiar with and work with aluminum at all, You'll know it's real easy for these things to be slightly off center when you try to screw it in. And if that's the case, you'll start to screw it in and you'll feel like, oh, this is a bit harder than it should be. So I use some white lithium grease on everything here. So there's really no pushback when you're screwing these guys in. So if you're feeling like these threads are not quite threading right and it's not going in like smooth like butter, stop immediately and unscrew it. Because once you cross thread an aluminum piece onto aluminum threads, it's, first of all, it's really hard to unscrew it. I mean, they basically will mash together and form a single piece, but those threads will get completely mangled and possibly be permanently ruined. In this situation, that's not the end of the world, because I could make a replacement pommel for you on my lathe, but it would not be super easy, and if I'm perfectly honest, it probably wouldn't come out quite this perfect if I did it, because I have a manual setup. My mill and my lathe are both manual. This was done on CNC. So be careful when you're reinstalling this. I mean, it doesn't want to catch just right for whatever reason, but if you're not rushing it and you're not putting pressure on it, and you just kind of go back and forth a bit until you feel it catch correctly, and then screw it in, and stop immediately once you feel like there might be something off, then you're fine. Super bright pixel blade, hex key set screw here on the side. You go nice and tight with it because it's got a aluminum trim ring mounted to the blade. Now let's run through the blade array real quick. So your first blade, nice bright Return of the Jedi green. Localized lockup. Force quotes.
I feel the conflict within you. Let go of your hate. I'll never turn to the dark side.
Each blade has its own set of force quotes. Next up, we've got a paler green.
You've taken your first step into a larger work. I'm getting too old for this sort of thing.
Nice and responsive. Next up, an even paler green. And this is the rescue sound font from the Luke scene at the end of season 2 in The Mandalorian. It's actually a really good sound font. This is a cyan blade, so still staying in the green realm.
You'll find I'm full of surprises. Your overconfidence is your weakness.
This is K-Sith's The Light V2. One of my favorite sound fonts of all time. This is K-Sith's The Light V1. And as a result, I did a blue blade because it's kind of, you know, Finn's sound and Finn's color.
The droids you're looking for.
Next up, we've got an electricity blade. This is a green turbine blade. So it's got a super fast ignition and retraction that is cycling up. Next up we've got, I think, Mace Windu Blade.
The Force is what gives the Jedi's power. It's an energy field created by all living things, including all the rounders, all kinds that gather. Let go your conscious self and act on instinct.
Vader Blade, of course. Painfully slow retraction, somewhat slow ignition. And 2 fire blades to finish it off. Oh, I lied. Yellow and blue contrast blade first. Alright, now your twin fire blades to finish it off. This is a kind of a distressed laser fire blade. It's got random per LED flicker programming. K-Sith's Crossguard V2 sound font. And then finally, this is a traditional Proffieboard fire blade. Or at least somewhat traditional. Sound font is Spitfire.
The Force will be with you. Always. Who's the more foolish, the fool or the fool who follows it?
Yeah, I need to address a couple of Force quotes, but
Who's the more foolish, the fool or the fool who follows it?
still good though. Anything that Alec Guinness said ever is pretty much worth listening to. And then we're back to the beginning. So I need to address those Force quotes quickly, and then I think I'm going to turn the sensitivity up maybe just 0.1 or 0.2 to make it a tiny bit more clash sensitive. Yeah, I mean, 2 out of 3 clashes are perfect. But aside from that, I think the programming is aces. The sound fonts are great. The blade array is great. The hilt, of course, is great because it's a beautiful hilt to begin with. The installation is nice and simple, but at the same time classy, elegant, and fun. And you've got all the parts and accessories that you could possibly need to enjoy playing with it. I'll send you a stand, of course. Any questions, Miguel, let me know. If there's anything you want to change, add, subtract, let me know. And if you want to, upgrade the operating system, change the way the controls work, adjust the props, totally wipe out the programming and do a different programming, let me know. We can do whatever you want. That's the beauty of working with the Proffieboard. They're just utterly, eminently customizable and programmable. Otherwise, I think that's about it. Stay tuned. Thank you guys for watching. Next up is going to be a fully from scratch custom masterpiece. I guess it's a Scrapflex build, I would say, for Tad. So Tad, stay tuned. Yours is coming up next. And as always, thank you guys for watching.